So we're learning Pru Urvu in Derech Mitzvotecha, and we're on page 4, I believe. And in the middle of the page, there's 2 dots. V'zoti tachlit yiridat ha'adam le'olam hazeh.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if we did Tzimtzum Kipshuta or not Kipshuta, but if we didn't, it's fine.
We did do Tzimtzum Shema Kipshuta, where Hashem moves his energy aside, however leaves Sovev Kol Amin.
Right. So now, there's another point that's very important to know about how Chassidic interprets the Arizal system. And this was actually in today's Tanya. And in today's Tanya, he has a very important sentence here. He says that even though in the Kav, when things come down, when things come down in the Memale, and there are different levels, and the most basic system of different levels that we have is Domem, Tzomech, Chaim, and Daber. Is inanimate, vegetable, life, and speaking. Those are the 4 levels of existence, basically, in our world. The best, the most, basic categories.
Varying levels of energy.
Right. So that's how we think about it. We think about it as that it has to do with the type of energy that came down. But he has an incredible statement that he says in today's Tanya. He says, וכמו שאין ערך ודמיון הערה והמשכת החיות שבדומם וצומח להערה והמשכת החיות המלובש בחי ומדבר, אף שבכולן אור אחד שווה. So he says, in terms of the Islabshus, in terms of how it's enclosed in, whether it's an inanimate being, or whether it's in a vegetable, or whether it's in an animal, or whether it's in a human being, it seems to us that the light, the way it's enclosed inside, is completely different. So we think that it's completely different, but really it's only one light that's shining in all of them. There's only one light that's giving life to all these levels. It's the vessel that makes it different. Meaning that in the inanimate, and this is, what does this sound like? This sounds like Soviv. Doesn't sound like Mimale. Mimale, it's supposed to be that at every level, the light is different. Mm-hmm. But what he stresses here, right, it's a different type of light, but he says, no. Really, it's all about the vessels creating the difference.
How it's received.
Right. So the inanimate body is far less complex. So when the infinite light comes into it, it expresses itself as an inanimate body, as what's needed for the tzura, for the form that makes up an inanimate body. When you have a more complex body in a vegetable, in some plant life, so the light is still the same light. It can enliven anything, but now it's coming into a more complex body. Right. So when you extend this further and you go into the main topic of the Tanya, which is that we have 2 different souls. We have an animal soul and a human soul, or a divine soul. There too the same principle holds. That Hashem really, the light that comes in to enliven the soul from top to bottom is all the same. It's all one light. But there are, as it were, spiritual vessels that are different. So the spiritual vessel of the animal soul is simply different than the spiritual vessel of the divine soul.
Like melt the heat will melt aluminum at so many degrees. It's the same heat.
Right, it's the same heat, same energy.
Heat will melt lead.
Right. So what does this do? It gives us a tremendous bridge between the Rambam's Shita and between Chassidus. Usually this is one of the things that's attacked a lot, which is why did the Alter Rebbe go back on what the Rambam, it seemed to make a very important advance. Because again, what's our whole purpose? Our whole purpose in learning Torah is to try to unify reality. Is to make reality, the way that we experience it, reflect that God is one. So if we end up having to have different categories for different things, so we've sort of gone back on that. So the Rambam did an incredible thing.
If we make different categories for different things, then we're steeping ourselves further into the differentiation.
Right. But it's okay to differentiate as long as you have some kind of fallback that you come and you say, but in the end I know that this is all one, and I have some way of explaining it. So the Rambam in his time, he really started what we call Jewish psychology, because in his introduction to Pirkei Avos, which is called the 8 chapters, so there he gives a whole theory of how the soul works and how it functions. And he starts it by saying a very profound statement. He says, but know that in the end, all these forces are just manifestations of the same soul. They're not different. And yet, when you start learning Chassidus, the first thing you hear is, wait a minute, you have an animal soul and a divine soul. So we broke it apart again. But really, there's no choice. Because as you learn more about the world, right, you get more differentiation. It's very hard to stop doing. In that sense, that's sort of like technology. You should be to think about it. I should be in the back part of technology, not driving forward. It's like saying, I don't want to have to deal with a new differentiation every time. Only if something sticks for a long time and we see that it holds, and there really is a difference between an electron and a proton. Okay, now we have to figure out how in the world are we going to bring the electron and the proton together, and to show that Hashem is one, to show God's unity also in reality.
Choices.
So now I have to decide which one is Hashem.
It's actually the same, it's just the color, the light's the same, just the color's different.
There you have it. That's all of Kabbalah in a nutshell, by the way. So now you have this issue of more differentiation because we learned more. So after the Arizal says the Tanya, you can't hold on to the Rambam's simple explanation. Everything is just one, because when you read about it in the Rambam, you see he's only talking about the physical powers of the soul. He's not talking about anything that has to do with the moral powers of the soul. And somehow he skips that. But when you come, so maybe he didn't have a theory, I don't know what. Maybe he didn't need it. But once you come out of the Arizal, once you come out of Kabbalah, there's so much differentiation. So the Alter Rebbe almost can't get away from it. So he has to differentiate between the animal soul and the divine soul. He has to make some kind of, but, and this is the amazing thing that he says here today, אף שבכולן אור אחד שווה בבחינת הסתר פנים, ומלובש בלבוש אחד בכולן, שהוא לבוש נוגה. In the end, they're all being sustained, or they're all being animated by the same energy, by the same light. So in that sense, everything is still one. It's just that the vessels.
It's the same frequency.
Hmm?
It's the same frequency. Not just the same light, it's the same
Could
frequency.
be. It would be like saying that on my cell phone, on that frequency, I hear my wife talk, and somebody else on the same frequency hears somebody else talk.
You have a different chip.
Right? Or a different connection. I'm connected to something different.
The strength of the frequency differs, and that's why it's domem, someh, chai, etc. Because it's the same frequency, it's just the amount of it that's present
Or
on the life form.
something that we've been suggesting for a long time is that they're all phase shifts, really one from the other. But it's really all the same frequency, all the same amplitude. It's in different phase. There's what we call phase modulation in electronics. You can basically fit as many signals as you want on the same frequency, and the way you do it is by phase modulation.
When the electricity comes through the copper cable, it's the same electricity. It doesn't change it, but when it's received, it's either the power is when it's received, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or diminished during.
Right.
So those are phases?
So phases would be like more how you a lot of channels on the same signal. Okay. In any case, so the purpose of man coming into the world, להמשיך גילוי אור אינסוף ברוך הוא הסובב כל עלמין מאלם אל הגילוי. So this light that we've been calling the equalizing light, the light of the Sovev, is here, it's present here all the time, but it's concealed. And so the whole purpose of coming into the world, the whole purpose of a person living here for 70, 80, 90 years, how many years he lives, and in the end he has to go back, is in order to do as much as he can to reveal the Sovev, to reveal this concealed light, which is called the equalizing light. The light that puts into being or is both the kav and the sovev. But here in this case, it's what allows the physical existence in this world. And as we said a number of times, to fully explain what it would mean that the physical objects in our world would suddenly reveal godliness, he says that we can't explain yet. Because that's exactly the nature of the world to come. The world to come is a place where this begins to be revealed. And that's according to the pasuk, "V'lo yikanefot morecha," that your teacher will no longer be concealed, and the teacher here is Hashem, in that sense. But we know that this is what the prophets talked about, that there would be some kind of revelation. And the truth is, you don't even need the prophets to say it. It's almost a given. Because if you believe that Hashem created the world, and at the moment you cannot see Hashem in anything physical, so there must come a time when this will be revealed. However Hashem is doing this, that Hashem is in all of this. So here it says, and Hashem's honor or his splendor will be revealed. And it says specifically, and every flesh will see together that Hashem spoke. So it's an ability to see physical objects as a manifestation of Hashem's will, because you'll see it with your physical eyes, not in the mind's eye. Now we see everything in the mind's eye. So for us, again, like we said, all of our connection with Hashem is through the kav, through the memale, through the Torah. The Torah is basically the kav.
The Torah is the kav.
Okay. The Torah and the soul, basically. To say it another way, this is how I was thinking about it this morning when I was learning Tanya, that I usually say that if you want to feed your divine soul, you have to learn Torah. But here it would be a little bit different. It would be like, it's not that you're feeding your divine soul. It's that whatever amount of Torah you know in your head, that is your divine soul. Meaning that as my mind is influenced by how Torah thinks, meaning I begin to think like Torah, I get da Torah as it's called. The more I get that, the more the light that's shining in me is now shining as what we call divine soul.
You mean?
The light is shining in me anyway, it just doesn't have a vessel. In every Jew, it's enlightening him anyway, but there's no vessel to receive it. Like we said, the electricity is there in the outlet, there's nothing to connect. So the moment you begin to fashion your mind, which is the highest vessel that you have, based on Torah, it becomes a receiver to reveal the light of the kav, the light of the memale, the gradated light, the light that comes down, as it were, and shows different levels. But we don't have our eyes, no matter how much we train them, they cannot see the divinity in the physical. It doesn't matter how much you train it. I mean, theoretically, it should be trainable.
Yeah, because what is the difference between the mind's eye and the physical eye? I mean, isn't there a point where they're the same? Like if the mind's eye is strong enough,
Like by the Alter
Isn't
Rebbe,
that
that he
physical eye?
could see that the Dvar Hashem in the beams of his house.
Right, that's what he said at the end of his life. He said, now I see the koach hapoel banifal. Now I see, but he didn't say that I see it in... He doesn't say, I'm now seeing what it means that this beam is it's not my... Okay, I mean, it needs to be explained. I guess it's up for interpretation exactly what he meant, but it was the very end of his life, if in any way.
because you can't be in the beginning of your life in before Olam Haba and
Why
have
can't
an
you just
experience.
learn it according to Tviyat Ayin?
So that you can do.
Okay.
That, by the way, what's the big difference between Sovev and Memale? The biggest difference in Sovev and Memale really is the Sovev is objective, and the Memale is subjective. That's why we connect it to the soul. So Sovev, when we say that it's subjective, it means that all of us will agree that there is a table here. But when we read a passage of Torah, we won't agree necessarily in exactly what it says. We can work on it and try to come to a consensus. But in general, it's up for interpretation.
Because that truth is only an aspect of truth generated
Right.
by some sort of consensus, at least the truth that you decided through the consensus.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean that it is that.
Right? Why? Because it's subjective. It's subjective truth. In the end, all of Torah is, even though we like to call it truth, but it depends on the chachamim of the generation. Depends on the scholars of the generation. They decide what it means now. And you can become a part of this conversation. You just have to be a big enough chacham. You have to become part of it. But when it comes to a table, there's no interpretation. You can't walk through it. There's nobody who can walk through this table and say it doesn't exist. That doesn't happen. So what does that tell us about the eye? It tells us that when it comes to seeing the sovev, we are influenced by it, meaning that it's shining itself into our eye. When it comes to the memale, it's the opposite action. There used to be, we talked about this, there were two pictures of what it meant to see. In the ancient world, to see meant that light came out of the eye. In the modern world, which is more objective, it means that light comes into the eye. In principle, it doesn't really matter, except that there's just two different pictures of what it means to see. Do I see what I want to see? And if I train my will to see certain things, I will see them. Meaning, if I train myself to see goodness in people, I will see it. And because light is coming out of my eyes, the light is like a result of what I want to see. Somebody will say, but this is not objective. I know it's not objective. I would like to change my psyche such that whenever I look at a person, I see only the positive things in them. I know that they have negative. I'm not blind. I also see the negative, but that's not what I'm not interested in being affected. I'm interested in affecting. And so when I train myself to see a certain way, I affect reality. That's the light coming out of my eye. So that's more the kav. That's how the gradated light works. And the misovev works the other way around. It's objective. But that's why the revelation of Hashem has to be in the sovev. It has to be in the physical, because otherwise it's up for interpretation. So one person will say Hashem revealed himself. One person will say he revealed himself this way, that way. They have different opinions about what it means. But there's no objective agreement. But when Hashem reveals himself through what we call the surrounding light, suddenly everybody comes to immediately agree 100% that what we just experienced is a revelation of the divine.
We don't experience that in any way, though. I mean, in some way, but not in a revealed way. The sovev. We can't experience the sovev.
No, we cannot.
Meaning,
Right.
consciously.
Right.
We
We have
are
no,
consciousness
right now we have no
at
experience.
best can perceive whatever frequencies it is shaykh to in memale, but
Right.
it has no shaykhut to sovev, since it's a completely different format of energy that physical beings can maybe manifest, except not be conscious of.
And because of that, it's left for the future. But how do we create that future? So the point he's saying now is that the mitzvahs, because the mitzvahs are exactly to align the world in a physical way with Hashem's will. So they affect the physical, they affect the sovev, as it were. Okay. This is the main promise that Hashem made through the prophets, that the glory of Hashem will be revealed. Like we said, כל בחינות הגן עדן, אם היות כי רבי כנ"ל, באורך המענה כבר נדבר לעיל, שלגבי עצמתו יתברך הוא כטיפה מן הים. As much as Gan Eden, which is a general name for the Memale, it's a general name for all the different levels of Torah that you can grasp, as great as they are, as wonderful as they are like a drop of water in the ocean compared to Hashem's essence. And the essence itself is only revealed through the sovev. והאצילות עם עשייה שווים בהשוואה אחת ממש. And relative to the Sovev, relative to Hashem's essence, even Atzilus is like Asiya. Even the world of emanation, which is mamish one with Hashem, is like action, relatively speaking. כי הרי האינסוף הבלתי בעל גבול, כל בחינת בעל גבול שווים אצלו. For what is infinite, what has no limitations, any kind of limit is actually the same. Okay, so we had all those examples. ואינו מרקם, and they're not of the same category at all as what we call unlimited light. אם היות, כי כשהם נערכים בינן לבין עצמן, יש ביניהם מרחקים רבים, even though when we come to relate them, to compare them one to another, certainly 100 is more than one. But relative to the infinite, 101 are the same. There's so many differences between them in the end that you can't even count them. That's true. There's many, many, many levels when you come to the Memale, when you come to things that are limited. There are an infinite number of levels. But you can't, from this, ever understand what it means, something that's unlimited. So as many numbers as you'll count, you still have no conception of what infinity means. וזאת המעלה אי אפשר להגיע כי אם על ידי ירידת הנשמה לגוף דווקא. Like we said, the only way to grasp the sovev, to grasp what is beyond count, what he's saying is that the human experience is doomed to failure. As much as you'll try to explain yourself, as much as you'll try to write poetry, to describe, to say, to whatever, anytime you try to break up the experience into pieces, you are doomed to fail.
By design.
Okay? Because experience is infinite. The very experience is a sovev. That's reality. It's a subjective reality. It can never be described fully. Doesn't matter how many categories you break it up into.
Because it can at best only be described in relation to itself, from its own, from
Right.
the thing
It can
the
never
extent
escape.
of its imagination.
There's no escape velocity to get you out of there.
Of course not, because
You're always
how
stuck.
could it? Yeah.
So, but still, something about the human condition keeps telling us all the time that we need to say, we need to speak, we need to share, we need to. But
Always out there after all.
okay. And what's the greatest thing that you can do? Be quiet. And that's what Chazal mean when they say, I have lived. I remember who says it in Pirkei Avos. It says, I've lived between the sages for all my life, and I've never found anything as good as silence for the body, because the body is the physical experience, and the silence is far beyond any words that will ever be spoken. Rav Steinsaltz once told me a wonderful story that here in Yerushalayim, he took over from Peretz Chen. Peretz Chen was not the original Peretz Chen, but he's his grandson, I think. And he used to live in Karim in the 50s. He passed away sometime in the 50s, maybe late 50s. When I say he took over, because Peretz Chen had a shir by Shazar and all kinds of important things that he did in Yerushalayim, and he passed them on to Rav Steinsaltz to take them over. But he told me a very interesting story. He said towards the end of his life, about the last few months of his life, I don't remember who it was that came over. It was another very famous chassid. He came over to visit him. They knew this was the last time that we'd probably see each other. And he says that they just sat one across from the other, and just like, they never said a word.
But they did. They were talking
Yeah.
about it.
They said everything. It's a very powerful thing when you think about it. The shared experience of life is far greater than all the words that could ever be spoken to describe what we went through. Whatever they went through a lot of things together. But I thought it was one of the most. I can't think of a poem that captures that, because even the description doesn't do it justice. But you can imagine what it was.
Well, he's the smartest guy I ever met. How do you know? Because he doesn't say a word. He doesn't Shabbos, you couldn't move.
I didn't work.
You tried last week?
But by the way, that's again, when you mentioned that, I think we talked about it. That on Shabbos, because she iktiru ledaber b'Shabbat, and in Yerushalmi it says that Chazal almost didn't let us speak on Shabbos.
Yeah.
Why? Because Shabbos is Mein Olam Haba. In a certain sense, Olam Haba is very silent.
But also comment that my reaction was, that's not Geula Din. Because like, you're not, this doesn't feel Geula Din. Maybe it's the way we get to Geula. But,
What, not to speak on Shabbos?
yeah. And just in general, like the idea of the holding back. Like maybe it's the
If you're
necessary
holding
means,
back,
but
if you're
it's not
holding,
about the physical world. Like you can't, Tanya, it's like it's dafka not via.
There's
we
a-
were learning
We need to do the mitzvah
Sikkurei
mas.
Maisios yesterday, and in there it says the first word, I think it says Data Nashim Kalat. So I said, so what does this mean? He says, because women like to talk.
Also,
And
women
that's-
malchut is Geula.
Exactly.
Build up the malchut.
there's a story by Yudlam in Peretz that he describes Shabbos by the Rebbe. He doesn't say which Rebbe it is. I don't know who he was connected to. It's one of the most powerful pictures of Shabbos I've ever read. And it's all silent. It's just he describes how nature suddenly is more real, more larger, more colorful. It's almost like the switch from a black and white movie to a color movie, but not just color, psychedelic color. And suddenly you realize, we don't say that in the end you don't talk in the world to come, we just say that it flips. That if the ikar in this world is to speak, then the ikar in the world to come becomes to be silent. Because you do speak, even on Shabbos you do speak in the end. But what's the major and what's the minor becomes reversed. And you're able to take in so much from what there is. There's a book that I read a long time ago by Arthur C. Clarke. It's called Childhood's End. I don't know where he got his ideas from, but he describes the end of humanity as we know it, because all the children under 10 or something, they're under 12, I don't remember what age he took. At some point they evolve beyond everybody who's sentient, who's older. And the way they evolve is, at first they don't understand, they think they're sick, that they suddenly become like catatonic, they don't move, and they're just staring into the distance. And at first they think it's some kind of plague, it's some kind of autism took over, or I don't know what. And slowly they understand that there's a transformation going on, and that the children are now perceiving in reality what the parents can't get. So really, in a certain sense, we're sometimes I think of it that people in our generation in the last 10 years have started expressing themselves far, far beyond in any other period of history. It's not just because, you could say the quality is very low, but I don't think that really matters. What really matters is that every single person knows how to text, and every single person is writing stuff, and every single person is expressing themselves. But they're all expressing themselves, or mostly expressing themselves in some kind of written form. And it's sort of like we're getting it all out of our system. Everything needs to be said. So, okay, say it all. Say everything there is to be said. At some point, you'll say everything there was to be said. It'll come to a place where, okay, we've heard that, it's nothing new. And we're still at the stage where we're just crazy about this new toy, that every single word ever spoken is available now. And every single word being spoken is also available. But at some point, like Kohelet says, the ear has enough of it. Tisba ozen mishma, like that the ear is filled already, you can't take it anymore. And then suddenly some kind of switch apparently happens. That you begin to perceive, you begin to see things instead of hear them. You begin to see instead of use words. And that's apparently the movement from the Sovev to the Memale, or like we like to say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. The picture is v'ra'u kol basar yochda. Everybody will see Hashem. But right now we're still at the level of arguing with one another about whether Hashem's like this, like that. What does he want? He wants this, he wants that. And when it becomes silent, suddenly, at least for a moment, then suddenly Hashem appears. And that's what we know, that Hashem's not in the noise, he's not in this, he's in the still silence. And still silence here doesn't mean that there's like suddenly a moment of, okay, everybody be quiet. But rather, I guess we grow beyond.
It's the level above the daber, it's
And that's what we call se'ag lechokhma shtika. To really come to chokhmah, which is the ability to perceive the nothingness. So there's a need for some type of silence. And again, it's a silence that's inside. It's not necessarily, you could be speaking and still be silent. You could be saying things and still be silent. Okay. וזאת המעלה, אי אפשר להגיע כי אם על ידי ירידת הנשמה לגוף. And so this type of revelation of the sovev can only occur when the neshama comes down into the body, because the neshama by itself is by definition levels. It's by definition going up and down. Even just to say the neshama comes down, even just to say that implies that the neshama goes through levels. There's higher levels and lower levels. And sometimes it comes down to a lower level in this world, sometimes it comes down to a higher level in this world. No, it depends. One guy is gifted with a very good brain, and so it's also much more of a pity if he doesn't use his mind to learn Torah, to develop it intellectually, to develop it emotionally. Because even to develop emotionally, you need a good mind. So just the fact that neshama comes down, and it depends where it came down to, where it landed, that defines the memale, that defines the limits. But the body, being inside the physical body, and the body, like we said, is equal. It's the same. I don't know if we talked about this. We did that. All the bodies are equal, says the Tanya. Whether it's a Jew or non-Jew, they're all the same. דווקא בהיות כי בחינת אור אינסוף ברוך הסובב כל העולמים, הרי בו נאמר מתחת זרועות עולם. That he's under what we call the levels of the world. Zoroat olam, there's this zoroat, that zoroat, each one going into a different place. So the Sovev reaches underneath all these levels.
I thought it was the Zoroat olam is an imaginary arm, one arm, single arm that's holding the world and below, holding the world. So anything below that arm is below the Zoroat, and anything above the arm is already in the. I couldn't figure out what this. I read the Perush on this. I couldn't figure it out.
So this gets into. I won't get into the whole story, but this gets into the Babylonian picture of the cosmos.
Okay.
That this pasuk describes how they thought that the world was being held up. So basically, there was like, at some point you get this picture of the Atlas holding up the world, but in the Babylonian picture there were like arms that were holding up the flat earth. Okay, and the question was, what's underneath?
Yeah.
Right, famous thing that I don't remember who was giving a lecture on cosmology, and then this little old lady comes up and says, Professor so-and-so, it was very interesting to hear what you said, but you do know that the earth is being held up by a turtle. It's not just floating out there in space. So he says, really? And what's underneath the turtle? Well, there's another turtle. And then, it's turtles all the way down. So there was this conception that something had to be holding it.
Down to work.
So that was beyond the conception. It's all the way down, so there's no question. So there was this conception that something's holding you. So what's underneath? The concept of there being something underneath is one of the big topics that the Alter Rebbe discusses at the beginning of his Tafkuf Samach Beis. He has a Sefer of Maimarim, the first Sefer of Maimarim that we have from him from Liozna. From Liozna. I want to say Liozna. From Liadi.
Okay.
Now we got it. For some reason, I have it confused now. He moved from Liozna to Liadi, and this was after his second incarceration. And in Tanya days, he has the first treatments of difficult topics. One of the most difficult topics that he presents it through like a scientific question, but it's this question exactly: is why is it that the antipodal people don't fall off the face of the earth? Meaning, it was known since the 3rd century BCE that the earth is round. But it took time until people understood that if it's round, it means that people that are underneath, they're upside down. So the question became, why are they being? What's holding them up? Why are they not falling off the face of the earth? That's how they thought. So he didn't know about gravity, and it doesn't really matter whether you know about gravity or not. He answers the question exactly the way the Chassidic is answering it here. He says, when you have a circle represents equal measures everywhere. So he says, I don't know what's holding us up, but whatever we feel, they feel the same thing there. So he has no conception of gravity. He never read Newton. I don't think he had any concept of what this meant. But he says, based on the geometrical model, that if this is a circle, and we know that it is, then it must be, and again, it's a representation. It's a geometric representation that's guiding him, not the physics behind it. He says it must be the same everywhere. And so whatever is keeping me here is also keeping them there. And really, he almost says it. I think he almost says it. He doesn't quite say it, but he says in many other places. It doesn't, because we said the circle doesn't have a beginning and an end. So why are you saying that you're up? Maybe you're the one who's down, and they're the ones that are up. But that's really what he means. It means there's no difference. So it's a tremendous sugya that it doesn't matter which force you call it into to help you. The point is the geometry. That was the main thing. It's one of the first topics that he dealt with in Liadi. And so he has this idea, and that's what he's bringing here. That's what the Tzemach Tzedek is bringing here. That al derech mashal, ha'igul shelemata me'ir kmo lemala bereshit hakav. So the igul, the circle, the light that you have on top is exactly the light you have on bottom. They're both the same, meaning the same energy that you have above, you have below. Kmo lemala bereshit hakav. And any point that you take on the circle can be the beginning of a kav. So we talked about that in our a kav, somebody's kav, meaning that human experience doesn't matter where you are on the circle, because the circle makes everybody equal. So in a certain sense, it doesn't matter what your physical conditions are. The experience of the kav that comes out of that, the categories that you can build, they're all the same, regardless of whether you start. So, what's an example of this? So Shlomo HaMelech, when he wanted to explain something to somebody, so if the person was very wise, he could tell him a mashal that was in the world of creation, a very intellectual mashal. But a person who's a simple farmer, he could also explain it to them, because even though your experience of reality is from a much lower place, it doesn't matter where you start from on the circle. I can build you a kav, I can build you a category that or a gradated line that has categories on it that you'll understand. And that's a great principle of the circle. V'imiyot ki oro b'bchinat makif, harei gam lemala hu makif. V'nidber kol zeh hiטב b'makom acher. So I think he's referring to this Maimer in Tavkuf Samech Bet. And this was all explained in length somewhere else. וגם כי הנה נודע מעניין שבירת הכלים שנפלו ניצוצים דתו בנוגה דבייה, וכל מה שנפל למטה יותר בשורשו מאוד נעלה, ומזהו סוד היצר רע בנפש הבהמית, וכל המאכלים לצורכי הגוף, ואם כי הם מסתירים על אור קדושת השם, אבל כשאדם יגביר נפשו האלוקית ותבררם על דרך מה שכתוב בכל מעשיך היו לשם שמיים, כמו שביאר זה הרמב"ם, בפרט באהבת השם ברשפי אש מבחינת מאודיך, הנה יתגלה בהם כוחם ואורם מעולם התוהו, ששם היו אורות מרובים בבחינה בלי גבול כידוע. So now he tells us this was the whole thinking behind what the Arizal described as raising or elevating the nitzotzot. Because really, what is he saying? These nitzotzot, what do they represent? They represent glimpses or fractions of light from the sovev. And so it doesn't matter where they fell down. Wherever they fell down, if you bring them out, they reveal infinite light. And not to think, there's a very big principle, it means not to think about as one mitzvah being more important than another mitzvah. Meaning, somebody says, I can teach 1,000 people, referring to my world. He fills up stadiums. And he does birur, and he helps people elevate. He explains it to them. And somebody, he only has 2 people that he talks to every week, that's all. Or 1 person, or just even himself.
Because the 2 that come in from the herring.
The herring has it's actually the herring that has even the sparks. It's not even what he says. But if that causes an elevation of a spark, since all the sparks came from the world of Tohu, they came from this infinite light, the moment that they're elevated, it's all the same. It doesn't matter what you elevate. You can elevate something small, you can elevate something great. So don't try to calculate what carries more weight in the world, to do this mitzvah, or to do that mitzvah, to do it with this amount of people, that amount of people, to help 1 person, to help 1,000 people, it doesn't matter. Because the elevation that's being created, what's being released, is the light of the Soviv, is the light of the infinite. And all that needs to be revealed. And when it's revealed in everything, then it's suddenly, I guess, the prospect is that at some point, there's a critical mass revealed, or elevated up, all these sparks, and then suddenly it becomes that most of the world just speaks divinity to you, from wherever you look at it. וזו עניין בהתערות דלתתא, התערות דלילה שבזוהר, ועניין מן ומד שבעץ חיים. So this is what in the Zohar is called, it's exactly our parsha. Isha ki tazria v'yada zachar. That when there's an awakening from below, then there's an awakening from above. What do you mean an awakening from below? That I release a spark here, and then it reveals the entire sovev up there. And it's also what in the Zohar is called, that's what it's called in the Zohar. And by the Arizal, it's called manumad, the feminine waters and the masculine waters. And all this is what we call v'zeu inyan yiridat tzorech aliyah. אם כי הירידה רבה היא מעיגר רמה. אבל מה מאוד נפלא העלייה שלא בהדרגה ודילוג רב ועצום אשר כמוהו לא נהייתה. So it's true that when it descended, it's like it took a time to descend. It seems to us like the world deteriorated. But when you bring it out, then all at once it reveals the infinite. It's not a gradual process, because what came down is really the light of the infinite, the light of the Sovev. אשר כמוהו לא נהייתה, רצוני לומר, העתקה מהשגות גבוליים לבחינת גילוי אור אינסוף הבלתי בעל גבול. So every time that you elevate a spark, you're moving from a limited point of view to an unlimited point of view. וזהו שנצטווינו לפרוט ולרבות, and this is why we were commanded to be fruitful and multiply. Why? Because because every neshama that comes down is really a birur. It's really another kav that came down into the world to perform mitzvot, and that itself, the performance of the mitzvot that it does, is the revelation of the infinite sovev. Because that's when the sovev will be revealed, and it's all dependent on a soul being inside a body, and the body is providing access to the sovev. The body is providing access to the unlimited light. וזהו על ידי שירדו הנשמות בגוף דווקא, שבו ועל ידו מגיע הכוח הנפלא הזה לעצור ולקבל הערה זו. לעצור means to contain. So it's only when there's a body that there's an ability to access and to contain and to be a vessel for the infinite light of the Saviv, of the surrounding light. So that's
So the body is synonymous with mitzvah.
and bodies are synonymous with mitzvah. And that's exactly what we're learning now in the Tanya. Chapter 38 is all about that.
Okay.
וגם יובן מכאן, okay, so we'll skip this because it's not, okay, I'm skipping the bit.
Yeah.
ואתה צריך לבאר דרך פרט בעניין מצווה זו בסוד ייחוד זכר ונקבה. So all this was nice and good. But now there's another question. Why does it have to be a male and a female in order to create another body?
Okay.
Why? Why couldn't it just be like an amoeba?
Okay.
An amoeba, there's asexual reproduction in the world. So we would just split. So I would have my arm fall off. It would grow a body. It would walk away.
Yeah.
That's what amoebas do. But we have this concept that it's truly only a vessel for the infinite, for the neshama. Okay? It's an infinite vessel for the neshama if it came from a male and female, from a couple. So where does this, for instance, hold? This is one of the big secrets of halacha. I mean, we talked about this, but we didn't get that far because we were saving it for now. Speculation. I've never seen this written, but it seems to me that it follows very easily. That why did the Alter Rebbe paskin that you can kill a lice on Shabbos and it's not considered taking a soul? Because regardless of whether it's true or not true that they come from spontaneous generation, let's say that's not true.
There's no way a male and a female lass can find each other attractive. That's my master pele.
No, so if they
Therefore, must be.
I have another joke after we finish. I'll tell you. Remind me about E.T. But in any case, the Alter Rebbe, and this Rav Standels writes in his Talmud, he writes all the different types of asexual, basically called parthenogenesis. The different types of genesis that are not related to having a male and a female. And the stipulation here is that unless there's a male and a female, and this is a spiritual idea, that unless there's a male and a female, what comes down is, of course, alive. We're not saying that it's not alive. We are just saying that the body that was created is not a vessel, is not an infinite vessel for the what comes down, and therefore it's not a soul that comes down. It's something else. You could say it's a level of complexity. You could say it's like a computer. Would a computer ever, any kind of artificial intelligence, ever attain the status of what we call having a soul? Say another example. If I would clone myself, but clone myself without a male and a female. Right now, when we clone, we have to use a male and a female model because we don't know how to do it otherwise. What we do is we play a game, and we say, throw the male out. Just give me the genetic material, and I'll put it into the ovum and hope that it takes. So we're doing the same thing. We're just doing it artificially. It's not artificial insemination. It's much more complex. And the truth is, I don't think we know when it works or why it works and when it doesn't and why it didn't. It's sort of trial and error. But if that happens, it's still a male and a female. Except that said we didn't have them present. We just didn't have them present. But we took from their spiritual makeup. The question becomes, what if I could clone myself by just like what we just described? Take an arm off, awaken it in some way to become like stem cells, and have it grow back the body, or I don't know, something like that. So would that be considered something that can bring down a soul? So the answer would be no, because here there was no male and female involved. So there's a stipulation that for a soul, for inner light, for the kav to come down, the body that's formed has to have been made from male and female. And to check our hypothesis. So he'll now explain that we have examples of things that don't have that type of body, and therefore they're not considered to have a soul. As much as their soul is, even though they understand, they perceive much more than we do. But they're not considered to be like us. Those are the angels. So what is an angelic being? An angelic being is something that did not come from male and female, even though it did come from male and female, as we'll see, but it's not the same way that we come from male and female. So in a sense, it's not like male and female. We'll see in a moment how it's defined. Okay. ואתה צריך לבאר דרך פרט בעניין מצווה זו בסוד ייחוד זכר ונקבה. Why do you need a male and a female? והיות נודע לנו שהייחוד נמצא למעלה גם כן בנשמות, כידוע בעניין אברהם ושרה. So first of all, take away the body part. That's not the important thing. The important thing is that there's two categories called male and female. This also exists in souls. There's a male soul and a female soul. And it says that when they join down here, like Avram and Sarah, when they joined together, they brought forth, they caused the souls of the converts to be created. But when we're talking about angels, and again, forget about the moment that they don't have exactly the same body that we have, whatever they have, but they don't have male and female in the same sense, or they're not able to couple in the same sense. So because of that, they don't create something new. They never create a new soul from themselves. So to fully understand this, we have to get more into this very esoteric topic, which is how the angels function relative to how souls function. And this is a very big topic in and of itself. And it's a little strange even when people think about what could you possibly say about these things? So really we have to have some kind of reference point to be able to tackle this question. So to be able to tackle it, the easiest thing to do, and he'll introduce this in a moment, is to think about angels not as some kind of spiritual being, whatever, but just think of it as ideas. Just think of an angel as some kind of idea, some kind of force in the world. Usually when we talk about angels, so the simplest example that we have today in science that reflects the same type of notion is a physical force. So electromagnetism is a force that we use all the time. Most of our interactions in the world are electromagnetic. Every time I hit something and make a noise, that's an electromagnetic interaction. There's an electromagnetic force which is transferred by what we call an electron. So amazingly, the word for electron in Hebrew, the best word is ofan, and it's the name of an angel. And that gives us a cue that there's a lot of reasons why to choose this word, but in the end, it gives us a beautiful cue that all the angels in a certain sense can be described as either forces or as ideas that are being transferred in the world. Okay. To understand why souls are greater than angels, we need one more introduction. והוא שגם למעלה בספירות ומידות האלוקים נמצא עניין הייחוד והזיווג כידוע בזוהר ובעץ חיים. We know that the sphirot, which are definitely concepts, they have some form of coupling. They have some form of connection, a yichud, some unity. So for instance, Abba ve'ima v'zun. So these two general categories, the intellectual partzufim and the emotional partzufim, father principle, the mother principle, they come together. And the small face and the female face, they come together. And out of these, shemahem notzu neshamot v'malachim. And in general, from them come all the souls and all the angels. Now he has in parentheses, it's a long parentheses from what I remember. Okay, so we'll skip it. Okay?
בסדר, וגם.
וגם יש שני מיני זיווג. There's two types of ways in which they couple. האחד נקרא זיווג נשיקין בעץ חיים, והתאבקות רוחה ברוחה בזוהר. So in Eitz Chaim he calls it kissing, and in the Zohar it's called breath to breath, or spirit to spirit. שהוא בחינת חב"ד בחב"ד. And this is like the intellect with the intellect, a coupling between the intellects. ומזה שורש המלאכים, and that type of coupling is what angels are created from. So there's some kind of intellectual force with another intellectual force. And the second type of coupling, which again exists everywhere, in all the sfirot and all the peltafim, they all have these two, both nishikin and yesod b'yesod.
Meaning angels
are the result of the chabad b'chabad. The intellect with the intellect.
The angels can also have a zivug gufani, no? No.
No, that's the whole point.
Okay, cool, that's the whole point. Okay.
והשני זיווג גופני. The second one is called, relatively speaking, it's not kissing, it's called physical. And it's called the yesod b'yesod. It's the foundations one with the other. ומזה שורש הנשמות. And from that come down souls.
Meaning souls can have.
So on the one hand, it seems that the angels are much higher because they're the result of a coupling that's occurring in the intellectual realm. Okay, but and the souls are a result of the coupling happening much further down in the foundations.
Are these olamot that are having these various coupling?
It can be olamot, it can be sfirot, it can be peltafim.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
וביאור זה, הנה מבשרי החזה. So, if we want to understand this, what does the Zohar mean? Was Eitz Chaim saying? So we look at ourselves. על דרך משל, באדם יש שתי בחינות השפעות. הראשון זיווג גופני בהשפעת טיפת זכר, ושוהה ברחם הנקבה 9 חודשים ונעשה ולד. והשני השפעת שכל מרב לתלמיד. There's two types of coupling that we have in this world. The one type of coupling is between a male and a female, a husband and a wife.
Sharing genetic material.
Who also the mashpia gives to the mushpa, the male gives to the female. And again, male and female just means that one is the mashpia, one is the one who's giving, and one is the one who's receiving. Except that from that we know that a physical child is born. But there's another type of relationship which is just as powerful. In fact, it's even more powerful. It's like angelic. And that's a relationship between a teacher and a student. And the teacher is also giving to the student. Except what is the teacher giving to the student? He's giving him
wisdom
and intellect. Some kind of wisdom, some kind of knowledge. What's the saying that say Chazal? What do they mean to say? They want to say that the sperm comes out of the mind. Well, we know this. They also know that the sperm didn't come out of the mind. What they're trying to say is that the sperm is capable of creating a mind, an actual physical mind. So you say it comes from the source. Its source is in the mind. My words, where do they come from? They also come from the mind. And yet, they can never create another mind. No matter how much I talk, no matter how much I explain. I cannot give another person any more IQ than what he has right now. Any more physical matter of what makes up his brain. I can't give him talents that he doesn't have. Doesn't matter what I'll do. I can develop everything that he has. I can make it greater, stronger, deeper, so on. But I can't add an iota of intelligence no matter how much I speak. So what's the difference? That when it goes down, all the way down to the foundations, it becomes more, we'll call it more of a vessel. Whereas the words that I speak, as much as they're vessels for containing what my mind understands, they're ephemeral vessels. They're not strong. So in the end we have to say that when there's physical connection between a husband and a wife, where they're taking from in themselves is they're drawing from a higher place. What's the principle? The principle is that the higher something source is, the lower it can come. So for it to come down all the way to the foundations, which in the physical bodies is obviously the reproductive organs, it means that the energy that's being taken down is being taken down from a higher place. Otherwise it couldn't become so physical. ואומנם באמת שורשה יותר נעלה, אשר אנו רואים שמהטיפה ייוולד בדומה אדם שלם, שיש לו כוח השכל להשכיל על דבר, מה שאין כן מהשפעת שכל, לא יושפע רק איזה השפעת שכל גלוי, אבל לא יכול להשפיע לו עצם כוח שכלי, ולהחכים את המחוסר דעת בטבעו. וכדאמרין שאיך כן דרכיים קופנית ערוף שטלן. I can't give you a brain by speaking to you. But I can give you a brain if I give birth to you. So, and again, how do we judge things? We say that the highest thing that I can do in this world is to increase wisdom. But look at the difference. I can speak all I want from now until the end of the world, and it won't create one sentient being. But any idiot can create a sentient being. So what's the explanation? So it must be taken from a much, much higher place. It's not connected to what he knows or doesn't know. It's not connected to it at all. Okay, we'll end here because the next part is even more, a little bit even more difficult.